Clear waterproof membrane balcony application. Clear waterproofing membrane is a 2-part aliphatic polyurethane. 2 parts come pre-measured in each kit, but if you're an accredited installer, you'll most likely just purchase the 10-litre kit, as it's the cheapest way of buying the membrane and measuring it out yourself using the following mixing ratios. Vertical surfaces and showers 1 to 4, part 1 is always the largest amount. Do not exceed part 2 with more than 25% ratio. Balconies 1 to 10, being sure not to drop below 10% part 2. We used an increased amount of part 2 with vertical applications as it thickens up the membrane, making it easier to work with these surfaces and reducing runs. 1 litre or 1 quart of the membrane does up to 3 square metres or 30 square feet, 2 coats. Please do not install the membrane past the coverage as it will affect the trafficability of the membrane and will void the product warranty, as this will not be able to achieve minimum toughness for trafficability. Vacuum the surface thoroughly before commencing. Mixing. Measure out the correct amount, combine the 2 parts together. The membrane will thicken slightly if you're doing a 1 to 10 mix for balconies and more so with a 1 to 4 ratio for showers. Once combined or thickened, let the membrane rest. You will notice some bubbles appear, let it sit for 3 to 5 minutes and then mix again. The membrane can be mixed by hand or mechanically. If the membrane becomes too thick, which can happen if your product is a little older or in hot and humid climates, you can add up to 5% water to thin it back out again or to increase the dry time you have to work with. Please note, you can only ever add up to 5% water with any one mix of the membrane. We recommend installing the membrane with as little as possible double touching, meaning do not apply the membrane like paint, where you'd attempt to go over the one spot multiple times to get good coverage in each coat. You will need to always be extremely vigilant about wiping up droplets that occur from the membrane dropping off the bucket after you've tipped it out, off the roller, then apply it when you apply the membrane, when you're walking from one place to another, basically being extra vigilant at all times. These drips will stay white and affect the finish of your job and slow the application of the second coat, for the membrane needs to be clear when applying the second coat. You're going to have little bits of pieces that blow onto the surface. You'll need to pick these up and put them in your pocket and keep a tidy workspace. It's now time to remove your shoes or to put your shoe protectors on to keep the surface in pristine condition. Take a brush or small roller and do the first perimeter coat, going up and out from the wall approximately 100 ml or 4 inches. Making sure you have a good coverage of the junction in between, but not too thick, as this will slow the application of the second coat. Remember, if you have a skirting, the membrane needs to go over the top of the joint adhesive applied at the top of the skirting and bond to the wall. Once completed, you can put a fan on to decrease the dry time for the second coat to be applied. Once touch dry and clear, apply the second perimeter coat. This method of application is recommended, as when you are installing perimeter coats there is a lot more bending and twisting that takes place, and when the membrane is initially installed it is very soft and flexible. Twisting your feet on a fresh membrane can pull the membrane off the tiled surface. After the second perimeter coat, use the nap roller to install the membrane with the infill coats. Make sure you start at the furthest point and work back to the door. I'll demonstrate the application method using water on a cement board, as it's easier to see the methodology. Have a large amount of membrane on the roller. Put the roller in the center of where you're working. Put it down. Roll out to one side and then come back to the center and roll to the other side. When you put the next line on, being careful to overlap the line before by approximately 25 ml or 1 inch. If the area you're working on is quite wide, you can break it up into 2 sections for installation. Now see the application method on site with the membrane. You will notice when there are excesses of the membrane, the applicator does not re-roll the area but rather puts the roller down to absorb the excess and lifts it again. This will take some time to get used to, but you will master it. If you install the membrane as per our instructions, we'll use the right amount of product and reduce the possibility of streaking, which can occur if you go over tacking membrane. Please see the video on overcoming streaking to learn more. If you find you have excess membrane left over, then you'll need to do a third coat. Once the first coat is touch dry, take a picture, as this is what it will look like after the second coat has been applied, and we usually don't stay around for images. Mix the aggregate into the membrane and apply the second coat in the same manner you completed the first, but preferably in the opposite direction, being sure to continuously mix the membrane in the tray, but putting the roller to the bottom each time you get more membrane, and each time you pour new product from the bucket into the tray, as the aggregate is heavy and will settle to the bottom. If an issue does occur and you need to remove a section of freshly laid membrane, use a sharp disposable knife. Create a line around the section that needs to be removed, essentially cutting the membrane down to the tile and remove the section. When the membrane is freshly laid, it will be highly flexible. If you don't cut around the section, you have the possibility of pulling all the membrane off the surface. Then recoat. Make sure the environment around the time you finish the membrane is adequate for the membrane to dry before the temperature drop that occurs in the evening. If the membrane does not dry and dew forms on the membrane before it is touch dry, it will foul the membrane, and you'll need to come and scrape it off and start again. So if you're unsure of the weather, put some large industrial fans on the area to assist in speeding up the dry time. Once the membrane is dry, it will not be negatively impacted by weather. Foot traffic is allowed after 24 hours of application. Furniture and pots and plants can be replaced following the customer care instructions 7 days after the membrane application. If you're doing a satin or matte finish on the balcony, your second coat will not use part 2. Instead, it will be replaced by matting paste. So mix up only what you need for each coat. Satin and matte finishes, the first coat will be part 1 and part 2. Second coat will be part 1, matting paste and slip resistant aggregate.